Today is Wednesday, December 18th in 2024, and we welcome you to our Chapter 49 podcast. My name is Larry Lannan. I'm a retiree and a communications volunteer for NTEU Chapter 49. Chapter 49 represents most IRS employees in the state of Indiana. I want to make one special note here before we start. We are headed to the holiday season, so this podcast will take a brief interregnum. This will be our last podcast. We expect to be back, if all goes well, by January 10th. So we'll be away for a little while for our holiday season. And as always, we welcome back our NTEU Chapter 49 President, Duncan Giles.
Thanks, Larry. It's always good to be here.
And we certainly want to welcome once again, and honored to have again on our podcast, the National President of NTEU, Doreen Greenwald. Doreen, thank you once again for taking some of your valuable time and sharing it with us.
Well, it's always been my honor to attend. I thank you guys for inviting me back. That's a good sign, I think, that you keep having me back. And I do want to wish all your listeners and viewers a happy holiday season. We have to keep in balance with the news and also the good things in life. And so I do wish everybody a safe and happy holiday season.
Yes, we're all for the good things in life, and we are all in favor of that. So I'm going to let Duncan Giles ask you the first question.
Okay, Doreen, as as we record this on Wednesday late morning, more and more information is coming out about the CR that it looks like the House has come to something that they're going to vote on. I wouldn't say they're come to an agreement, but it looks like they're going to be voting on that. What information do you have on that in regards to will there be a shutdown? Will there not be a shutdown? That type of thing.
So where we stand right now as we're recording is we know that there's been a lot of effort to get a continuing resolution put together. As we know, the current continuing resolution ends at the end of this week. And so the continuing resolution they're looking at would extend the budget through March 14th. They released the language in the bill that the House is looking at overnight. And so there's going to be a vote in the House, and then it has to go to the Senate tomorrow to stop a shutdown, a potential shutdown. Everything we're hearing on the Hill is there's no appetite for a shutdown. So they're working very hard to get a deal in place, at least to have a budget in place through the 14th of March. Again, they'll be at it again, getting close to March to try and get this all done. But everything we're hearing is that they are not looking for a holiday shutdown for federal employees, which is, to me, very good news. So that's a positive. There is some things, we're still analyzing all of the details in the package. Things may change as the day goes on. Things get added, things get pulled, to try to get a deal. So it is a definitely hot potato moving quickly as lawmakers try to get this thing done before the holidays so they can go home to their families. So what I would say to people is right now, everything looks positive that we will have a continuing resolution. It would be through March, and that there isn't language in the text. The IRS had been looking for what is called anomaly language to kind of address a clawback of some of the IRA funding. There's nothing in there. It's silent to that. It is a very high bar to get an anomaly added. And so what the anomaly was basically, a stopgap measure for the IRS. That will not negatively impact IRS employees going forward. There's enough funding at the IRS to address federal employees, so they should not worry about that. It was something we had hoped would be put in there, obviously, because we never want to have fights with the IRS on any kind of funding. But it was not in this continuing resolution, and I'm sure there'll be discussions of it going forward. But that is not a negative reflection on anything that's going to happen for IRS employees currently.
Doreen, the pay raise was not included in the continuing resolution. We don't have a budget, so the budget resolution does not address pay raise. So that falls to the president. I know that NTEU and a number of other organizations that advocate for federal employees are pushing for a higher pay raise because the military did receive a higher average pay raise than federal employees will be getting as things stand now, although it's not set in stone. The presidential proposal is still out there. Is there any indication, tea leaf, anything you can tell us as to whether the pay raise may be upped for the calendar year of 2025 for civilian workers?
So first of all, as you are absolutely right, NTEU has been pushing for a higher pay raise and will continue regardless of the outcome. As we've talked in the past, there is approximately a 27% pay gap between federal employees and their private sector counterparts. So we need these pay raises to help be able to retain employees and to make sure that they have enough to pay for their families. I mean, we saw FEHB rates go up this year, so a pay raise is very important. Yes, the president has proposed around 2% overall pay raise for federal employees, and I believe it's 4.3 for the military. While we were not able to get enough allies on the Hill to push the 7.4, we were hoping for under the FAIR Act. We'll continue to push for that. We have asked the president and along with other unions to ask for pay parity with the military. So meaning to change what he has put forward for federal employees to match the military. And that's been done a lot in the past. Former presidents have supported pay parity. And so we're pushing that with the president. I don't have any tea leaves to share. I think he will be very considerate of that approach where we are today. And I'm hopeful he comes to the right conclusion and grants pay parity.
Yeah, so if I can just add one more thing before I turn this back over to Duncan. This is related to budgetary matters in a sense. NTEU and many other organizations have been pushing for years to repeal or at least greatly modify the Social Security windfall provision and pension offset. It impacts people like me who worked for years in the private sector, then went to federal government employment and are covered under the Civil Service Retirement Act. It also impacts local people, police officers, teachers, others around the country. So there are at least hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions, who would be impacted by this. It's gotten further this year than ever. It passed the House overwhelmingly. It's in the Senate. The Senate leader, Chuck Schumer, at least for now, has said that he will put it on the calendar for a vote before the adjournment for a holiday. Where does this sit? Because I've been hearing stories both ways. Some people who seem to be in the know say, hey, once it gets to the floor, there are plenty of votes to pass this in the Senate. And I've been hearing other people saying that this is in trouble when it comes to a Senate vote. Do you and your legislative staff have any feel for this?
Well, I think we are farther, as you said, than ever before. The fact that it passed the House and is at the Senate is a positive thing. I would also say that since the Senate leader has said he will put it to the floor for a vote is also a positive thing, because leaders tend not to put things to the floor if they don't think it's going to have enough support, because that looks negative on their leadership often, unless they just want to clear it off for some reason. But I'm not getting that impression. Unions are very active right now, trying to make sure there's allies on the Hill in the Senate that will vote for to get this corrected. I mean, this has been a long time on our wish list for a long time because, people are getting hit with this. It's kind of like double taxation and it needs to be corrected. And so I don't have tea leaves. Obviously, a vote is a vote. And until it happens, I can't promise you anything. But I think all indications are positive. And it just comes down to making sure that that it gets to the floor and that the vote, obviously, we get enough allies there to push it over the mark. I will also say, though, that time is very short. We've got the holidays coming up. The budget is right now the priority in making sure funding continues. Obviously, these kind of things can be added to bills, can push. There's a lot of work that is trying to be pushed through the House, the Senate now and get done before the next administration comes in. So how that plays in is also an unknown.
Hey, let me ask Duncan Giles to ask the next question.
Yeah, Doreen, as you've heard, I've heard, Larry's heard, there is a lot of concern, confusion, whatever adjective you want to put to it, towards the new administration and things that people have heard on what's going to be happening. Are they going to be shutting down the entire government? Are they going to be cutting everybody's job? Are they going, all these different things where you hear things from the Doge Commission, things the president have said. What at this point, and I want you to discuss this in broader strokes because we don't want to, say exactly, but where's the NTU looking at for what's coming with the next administration? What are things that employees can bank on? And, what are possibilities going to be fights, things of that nature?
Well, the first thing I would say to all your listeners is take a deep breath, because what is happening in the media and social media and all the news is not currently happening in agencies. So do not panic. Do not read more into it. There's a lot of things being said. You mentioned, I'm not sure if they call it Doge or whatever. That is not a federal agency. That is a commission to make recommendations to the president, is my understanding. I did see an article recently that one of a Republican congressman said, Langford, was looking to encourage that commission to talk to federal employees to get their take on where inefficiencies exist in the government, saying that the people doing the job know better than anybody about where inefficiencies are. I support that statement because I do think federal employees know the struggles that they face and where there are inefficiencies. That said, I've heard rumors out there like, hey, let's get rid of the IRS. And I had a laugh because when I was watching it on social media, the bulk of people did not suggest getting rid of the IRS. They talked about things like institute a flat tax. That's been discussed in the past. Ultimately, we have a federal tax code. It's law. They would have to change all the laws to implement something new. And as everybody knows, that doesn't happen overnight or at all with a divided government. And people have very different takes on the federal government. What I can say about the IRS is they bring in about 96% of the entire budget for the federal government. And so they need the IRS to be functioning appropriately so that they can fund all their wish lists. And so employees should not be worried that on January 20th or January 21st, they are not going to have a job anymore. That's not going to happen. We do have a sound contract that was put into place in October. We've been negotiating the contract long before the election. That includes telework provisions. I know telework has been a topic of conversation. Again, like you point out, there's a lot of falsities out there. NTEU has had telework agreements since the early 90s. And if you recall, the Telework Enhancement Act came in 2010. And what was that in response to? Snowmageddon in the DMV area. They had a series of snowstorms that kept federal employees at home and unable to work. So telework is a crucial part of the federal government being successful in achieving its goals. And sometimes that's just not understood or known. We also know that in these conversations about, we need to get people back into their offices. Well, first of all, many federal employees share desks right now at a rate of 3-to-1 or 5-to-1 or more. They don't have their own desk, or their own office. So it's not like they could go back to the office and just sit there because they share a seat with multiple people. And that's efficient for the government because otherwise they would have to build on more buildings to house them, which is inefficient. Why would you want to spend more money on real estate instead of paying for employees who are answering calls of taxpayers who have questions, who want help in addressing their needs? And so we also saw during the pandemic, when CSRs were given the equipment finally to telework, the level of service went from 12% over 85%. So we know telework works. And, the American people want service, period. They don't really care if you're sitting behind a desk in your office or a desk at your home. They want somebody to answer their call, and they want help getting the information they need. And so we will be, as a union, getting that kind of information out to people because a lot of the information out there is just false. But for employees, take a deep breath. We have a contract in place. Telework is not changing. We're going to honor that contract going forward, and they should not stress out about that.
If I may follow up a little bit about that, because even though I'm retired, I've been retired for 13 years, I still know plenty of people who work for the IRS, and I have been hearing a lot of nervousness about telework. And I think part of this comes from what I can only describe as misinformation. I mean, the Speaker of the House was given a pants on fire rating from Speaker of the House saying 1% of federal employees come to work, which is not even anywhere in the neighborhood of anything accurate. And we've seen some senators come out with some information that does not appear to be backed up by any real reliable information. So we're seeing a lot of discussion out there that, quite frankly, is just incorrect. I guess my question to you is as a union, how do you combat this? And to individual employees who hear this in their community where people are telling them this, how do you respond to people making these kind of assertions?
Well, I always think facts are our friends. I mean, we have to be honest about what the reality is. A recent study was done that showed the majority of people who are telework, more people in the private sector are teleworking than the federal government. Because at one point it was said that it was only federal workers that were teleworking. What we know at the IRS is that while we've had telework agreements for around forever, the Telework Enhancement Act, the maximum amount you could telework still requires you come in 2 days a pay period. Most people come in 1 or 2 days a pay period. Some people only telework 1 day. So it's this concept that you're never in the office, you never come to work is just not true. That's not the reality in the federal government. And so we have to kind of talk about those things and make that known. Again, I think there's a concept out there that telework was only put in place for the pandemic and people didn't come back. That's not true. We also know that there's a lot of technology in place that has been built up over the years that you're able to have Teams meetings and share data. And when, for example, CSRs, the same monitoring system that they have for taking calls and answering questions and all of that is the same in the office as it is at home. So it's not as if they're, just at home and nothing's happening. They're in constant connection with the office. They're in constant connection getting their calls funneled to them to answer taxpayer questions. They're gated the same way as they are when they're in the office. So again, this is an effort that we have to, correct the record where it's wrong and just keep reiterating the positives. Again, this is about servicing the American people and making sure the levels of service are being met. And as a union, we have always supported telework when the work is portable so that people can be as efficient as in the office at home. And that's what's driven us from day one. And as I said, that goes back to the 90s. This isn't anything new. And we've seen studies. There was a recent study that attracting and retaining new hires for the federal government where telework is offered, they have an easier time getting quality candidates to apply. This is a complex issue. It is not just a, hey, everybody come back into the office type answer. And we've got to just really get the facts out there and explain that. Again, I think the American people, while it's red meat to throw out that like only 1% are coming in, or they're all in their pajamas watching Oprah, or whatever they're at swim up bars in Cabo. I've heard it all of which are false, absolutely false. I know federal workers are clocking in early, clocking in late on telework. They are, all they're giving up is their commute, and they are working their butts off every day to deliver for the American people. Yep. And that's what we need to be focused on.
Doreen, I was involved as a vice president of my local chapter in the 1990s when we had our first national contract allowing for what was then called FlexiPlace. We now moved into telework with technology. But, it was interesting because there was a lot of trepidation early amongst employees and managers. And it's taken time, I think, just within the agency. It's taken 20, 30 years for the employees and the managers to understand that telework has its benefits for the agency and for the people managing the agency.
And there's a lot of oversight to it, and people don't understand that.
Yep.
So, again, there's a lot of false narratives out there. We have to correct that. We do it where it makes sense. There's a lot of jobs where telework, the work is not portable, and people are coming in every day. As a whole, I believe IRS exceeds over 50% of people are not even on telework as a entire agency. So, that's the stuff that's not being shared with the American people. And I'm happy to share that with them.
Yeah, you and Duncan have made this point many times that if there was an edict that everybody come back to the office, there literally is no place to put them. So
Right.
it literally cannot be done anytime soon. Duncan, I'm going to turn this back over to you.
Yeah, one of the things that National's been pressing, and I think we need to go into a little bit of detail on this, is we want to ensure folks have their personal emails, personal cell phones on the NTEU website, where they have their addresses and things of that nature, to make sure that they can get the communication from national and local NTEU chapters timely, in case there's a shutdown or things of that nature, or a change in communications once a new administration takes over. Can you expound on that some?
Well, I think it's always important that we have current information, and we're really putting a push right now to get our members to share their information. Couple things happen. You may have moved, you may have multiple email addresses, and you only check one or two of those. We want to be able to have the most current information for our members because we are doing a lot of work on behalf of members, and we want to make sure that we're able to communicate that work with them, to get their feedback, to get their input. Many people become too reliant on the government email system. And folks, that's the government email system. There's things that we want to talk to our members about that we don't necessarily want the government to know we're talking about. Just in general, it's not work related, it's union related. And so it doesn't belong on a government email system. And so we need to have their home emails, and that's the easiest way for us to reach them because there's issues with the postal service and we want to be able to reach people immediately, which email gives us the opportunity to do that, and cell phone, because obviously nobody leaves home without these anymore, It's key that we have those things. And so as a union, and we're fighting hard for our members, and we want to be able to have that back and forth communication, and making sure we have the right information in our records helps us do that. And so we put a push on for December and early January. There's a contest you can submit. Just go in on the NTEU.org website, verify that we have the right information. You're automatically put into a drawing. And we really want people to do that. If you've updated your email and your address and things with your agency, they don't give us that information. So don't rely on like, hey, I updated it here, NTEU will automatically get it. We don't. We really rely on them to do that. If you have problems with it, you can reach out to NTEU and we'll help walk you through it. Duncan, you have access for your chapter members.
Yep.
You can help them get that updated. But it's really key, especially like if there's a government shutdown or if there's something that happens, over a weekend or something, even if there's an emergency situation that we become aware of. I like to, be able to send out an email or a message to somebody and say, hey, be aware of this, because we can't rely on the government to do those kind of messages and that people get them on time. So we want an email address that you'll look at, because it's not good if it's something you send all your junk mail to. Please don't give us that email address. Give us the one you actually read, and give us the cell phone number. And so we're able to reach out to you and keep you up to date on the important things we have going.
Yeah, because we don't spam, we don't send out,
No. We don't sell lists.
Stuff.
Nope.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to tell folks is I just had an instance, I think it was late last week, where someone was locked out of the NTEU website. Was very easy. I contacted NTEU National, boom, within, just a couple of hours, that was fixed. So they were able to go in and get their updated information in. So even if you're having issues, let your local chapters know so we can get that work for you so you can get on there. Because as you said, it is very important we have that information so we can make that direct contact.
Let me just say,
we appreciate everybody's cooperation and giving us that. So thank you.
One other reason that it's very important for you as a member of NTEU to have that information and be on the email list and get the updates. I think Duncan can vouch for me on this, and this goes all the way back to my time as a union official many years ago, is that the IRS is a layered bureaucracy. So when somebody in Washington sends an edict down, it has to go through an approval process. Doreen, you have a direct way of contacting chapter leaders, members, so you can directly in Washington get information to your members, to your chapter leaders very quickly without those layers of bureaucracy. And I can say that particularly in shutdowns and other emergency situations, as a union official, I had managers asking me what was going on because they hadn't got the word yet.
You're absolutely correct. And I think that's one of the powerful things of NTU. I've seen it at the table when we're negotiating a contract and a proposal comes across the table. And our chapter leaders are able to boom, 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 send a message right out to the people doing the work of the impacted by the proposal. And we get right away information about how people who do the job know how that will impact them. And we can counter in seconds and look out for them. And the people across the table from us have to go through all those layers. They don't know what to do. They can't even have a conversation with us. And so it is critical that we know and keep that communication going both ways with our membership, so that we can hear from them about what's important to them. So we're focusing our resources on the issues that matter to them, and vice versa, that we can share with them the work we're doing on their behalf. And so having that right information helps us do that.
So Duncan, any final question for Doreen?
I do not have any final questions. I just want to open it up to Doreen to say, do you have anything that you would like to add that we haven't covered?
No, I would just say, I understand there's a heightened anxiety anytime a new administration comes in. And we've heard a lot of rhetoric throughout the political season and even currently on social media and in the news. I would just remind people that we've been through transitions with administrations before. I was a federal employee for 35 years. I worked under a Democratic administration, a Republican administration. Not all have been positive on federal employees. But often when they get in the seat and they start looking at the realities and the details, they understand the complexities of government, and they understand how much federal employees really contribute to the success of our country. And so I want people to take a breath, to know that we're going to be okay. We are all going to get through this together. And right now, you should be focused on your family and friends and the holiday season and taking care of one another and finding joy in your life, because we will get through this. The media does not dictate what happens at the IRS. The person that they have proposed for the Department of the Treasury is somebody who has a long-standing history in economics. He's going to want to have a positive economic environment. He understands the role the IRS plays in successfully accomplishing that mission. And so we all have to remember the importance of why you're a federal employee and the mission that we do to serve the American people. And that will all work itself out. So NTU is aware of the threats out there. We have actions in place to protect against whatever may come our way. But let's not focus on the what ifs. Let's take it day by day. And let's just take the time right now to take a deep breath and enjoy the holidays and come back together, and we will stand strong and get through whatever comes our way.
I can't think of a better message to end than on that one. And I want to wish you, your family, and everybody in the Washington office of NTEU the best of holiday seasons. Doreen Greenwald, thank you so much. So much important messages we've received from you on this podcast today. And it's a great way for us to end the year of our podcasting. And Duncan, Giles, thank you. I want to wish you a happy holiday season as well, you and your wife and the rest of your family. And we wish that for all people watching and listening to this podcast. So, Doreen Greenwald, thank you. On behalf of Duncan, Giles, let me thank you for watching and listening. My name is Larry Lannan. Have a great holiday season. Be safe and be kind.